This time on the Shred School, we're going to be learning the Frontside 180, a trick you'll be doing forever. So it's a great thing to have locked down, and there's not a lot of technique, so it's a good way to build up another trick for your repertoire. Welcome back to Shred School 101, a course where I'm teaching you the tricks you need to get started in skateboarding. And today we're going to learn the Frontside 180, a trick that I think will be very helpful in building up confidence, getting used to landing on your board, and will be a good stepping stone to learning some tougher things like the kickflip. The only thing you absolutely need to have is a pretty strong ollie, not necessarily very high, but at least where you can flatten the board out in the air and be able to transfer your weight slightly back toward the nose. If you can do that, you're in pretty good shape. The pop shove it is helpful, but not directly. It's just helpful for confidence and things like that. Although if you do follow along all the way and you learn the backside half cab, then it will be kind of a similar idea. So let's jump into the trick. For the first time in this series, I'm going to recommend starting this trick while rolling. And the reason why is because if you learn a spinning trick stationary, you're learning something halfway between rolling forward and rolling backward. And when you try to do either of those, you'll have to adapt what you've done already. So it makes more sense to just start straight up doing it rolling forward for this one. We will do a fakie trick in a minute, but the way that you want to set your feet up is similar to how you would do an ollie with a couple little tweaks. First of all, your back foot should be a little bit more toward the heel side because you're going to push the tail out this way. And so the more you push it this way, the more your foot needs to be back toward the heel side to give you the room to push it but still stay with it, you know. So you'll do that, and to balance that out, you want to hang your toe off a little bit. At this point, your front foot should be right around here. You don't need a really strong, you don't need to pop that much. You don't need to have way back here. If you are still working on those ollies, I still think it's helpful to have it right around here. Because as you spin, you might land on the nose and pivot out the last part of the trick. If so, having your foot start closer to the nose is going to be a helpful thing for you down the line. Now, the way this trick works is all in your shoulders and your hips. When you start to do the trick, you want to wind up. That means spin your body the opposite way. Since we're spinning front side, which is going to be this way, for the most part, front side means pushing out ahead of you and backside is pushing behind you. That's not true always. We're not going to get too concerned with that in this course. But since you're going to be spinning front side, you want to rotate backside. And as you start to pop, you want to unwind. At your shoulders are going to drive your hips, which are going to drive your feet. Your hip bone's connected to the feet bone. There's stuff in the middle. But for the sake of this trick, you're just going to want to have your body twisted up, then untwist it right as you pop. That's where all the spin comes from. There's no way to spin in the air. You can't just ollie and then spin after the fact. You can twist slightly. That's a different story. That means when your feet go this way, your feet go this way and your arms go the opposite way, you can kind of twist and get a little bit extra. But 95% of your spin is going to come from before you even pop, all right? And don't be afraid to exaggerate it. If you can't get the full spin, we're going to talk about that in a second, but don't worry about how it looks, if it's going to be crazy, if you're way, wound up like crazy and then you unwind a lot. That's okay. Just do what you have to do to get through this. As we land the trick, start to get more comfortable with it, then you can work on that style and get a more comfortable way to do it. So the major difference between a regular straight ollie and a spinning one is that when you pop the tail, you want to pop it out this way. If you just turn your body and you pop straight, the board's not going to stay with you. So you have to push it out ahead of you as you ollie, and that should get you spinning. So if your shoulders are spinning, your hips are spinning, the board has been pushed outward, that's going to get the board spinning. You should all be spinning in the air, and you can land at any point. If you spin halfway and you land, that's okay. You shouldn't be going so fast that that's going to stop you dead and trip you or anything like that. You should be going slow enough that you can land, step over to the nose, pivot, and then keep going. So as long as you're landing on the board, you are in pretty good shape. That's a very important thing when you're trying to learn tricks. Landing on the board halfway is better than doing the full thing but not landing, because that means that your weight distribution and all that is correct. You just have to work on that technique slightly. All right. So if you're landing, you can pivot the rest of the way. You're in pretty good shape. The toughest things about this trick are getting the full rotation and keeping the board with you. If you're having that problem, I'm going to try to talk you through it. All right, so getting the full rotation is, again, mostly in your shoulders and your hips, but there are a couple things that could help. First of all, getting the height. If you wind up and you spin really, really fast, but you're barely getting off the ground, you do need a little bit more time. An interesting thing, though, is that how much you pull the board up in the air makes very little difference, because the amount that you jump affects the amount of time that you're in the air, but the amount you pull the board up doesn't matter, because you're in the air the same amount of time. You're just pulling the board up, bending your knees, then pushing it straight down. So you need enough height to come around, but you don't need to be blasting a 3-foot high Ollie just to do this one. So make sure you have enough height. You can always record yourself on your phone and watch it, see if that's the problem, see if it makes sense that you could spin faster. But yeah, just make sure you even go really hard with it. Go way harder than you think. Face all the way backward. Whip around and pop right at the last second. If you still don't have enough speed or enough spinning off of that, then that's when you have some problems. That's when you have to pop a little bit higher, try to get some more height. Keep your foot closer to the nose. Maybe get used to landing heavy on the nose so you can land and pivot around that last part. It's very common to land at like 95% and have to turn slightly after you land. Ideally, you could land straight, but that might not be day one, The other issue is keeping the board with you. This is going to be one of the hardest things throughout skateboarding, to be honest with you. Almost every trick, to me, if there's a spinning trick, there's always a new technique to learn to help keep the board beneath you. For this one, as you start to pop the trick, you don't want to pop straight. You want to pop out. I've talked about that before. But popping this way is different from popping this way or even this way. To me, I pop the board forward and out. So I pop it like that. And if I can do that, then the board is going to stay close to me, and I can land, and I can do the last part of it as a pivot, or I could slide it if it's a nice, polished concrete skate park ground. So yeah, try those things. Make sure you are winding up your body a lot to get that spin. Make sure you're popping it out. Work on different foot placements. You can put it, way over here if you have to. That could help. You could try it down here, get more pop, a little bit less scoop. Play with that slightly. Work on this front foot. You could do it right on the bolts if you wanted to. That'd be a little bit harder to get height, but you could do that. You could try it more like that. Just do some experimentation and see what works for you. If all else fails, try doing it into the grass like this. The reason why that's helpful is because you don't have to worry about being off balance. If you spin too hard, you will usually not be perfectly straight. Doing a 360 is hard because of that. It's not hard to get that much spin. It's hard to get that much spin and stay upright. But if you're going to land in the grass, it's not so hard. So you can spin really hard. You can throw the board in different ways, and you'll have that little safety net of knowing you're going to land in a softer spot. So that's also a good tip to use if you have to. If you want to advance your frontside 180s, you can do the standard stuff. You can do it a little bit faster, do it a little bit higher, a little bit smoother, cleaner, more consistently. But something I think is worth giving a shot with this one is trying a backside half cab. Now, a Caballero was invented by Steve Caballero. It's a fakie 360 Ollie. We're going to be doing a half of that, or half cab. And we're going to do it backside, which is the opposite way that we were spinning. So the technique is different. If you can do one, you can't do one, you might be able to do the other. That's why I'm teaching like two slightly different tricks. I want you to have experience popping and spinning. But if you can't do one, hopefully this one will work for you. Now, the foot position is going to be more like an Ollie. So like you may think a pop shove it is going to help, and I do think it will. Learning how to pop shove it is going to be helpful for doing any kind of backside spins, but you don't want your foot in a shove-it-y type spot. You want it more like this. Back foot stable, somewhere like this. Now the cool thing about this trick is that you can cheat kind of a lot. And what I mean by cheating is that you can get going, you can turn, pop about here, spin halfway, land, and turn until you're back straight. You can only do that going backwards because you can like do a, like a fakey kick turn and just land and keep kick turning. You can't really do that off the nose, or unless you pop the Ollie switch to the nose. With a half cab, it's all that same truck, so it kind of happens a little more easily. So yeah, work on that pivot. Do the pivot a bunch of times, feel comfortable with that, get kind of used to how it feels and how much you have to move your shoulders and all that, and eventually start introducing just a little bit of a pop. With some time you can pop more, do at least half the turn in the air, land. You can land and finish off the pivot, you can land and just roll at an angle and turn afterward. But yeah, doing a half cab is a good thing to at least try and see if it feels comfortable for you. And we will actually need this a little bit later because we're going to be doing a fakie big spin. It feels a lot different, but this is definitely a good one to have. My tip of the week is to practice manuals in parking lots or a basketball court. Something that has stripes painted in the ground is very helpful, because when you manual on an obstacle, on a box or something like that, you have to manual to the end and drop off. If you're in a parking lot, you manual to the end of the space and you can land after you pass that last stripe. Also, it's an easy way to keep track of how well you've done. You could do 2 spaces last week. This week you're doing 3 spaces consistently. And it's just a good way to get better at manuals. For your homework this week, I want you to clear an obstacle. With a trick of your choice, it could be this one, it could be just an Ollie, it could even be a pop shove it, but I want you to have some sort of gap. It could be a thick crack in the sidewalk that you can't just skate over. It could be a stick that you put down in the parking lot, something like that. Because it's really a different story doing a trick on flat versus doing a trick in a specific spot. And it's a lot harder. Even if you're only clearing a stick, having to plan that the stick is coming up, you got to time it out, you got to get ready, got to pop right at the last second so you have enough speed to clear it. All that type of stuff is a really good way to get a head start on that for the future of your street skating. And when you do get that, or if you just land the trick of this week, make sure you post it on Instagram with the hashtag ShredSchool101 so that I can take a look at it, and it'll help me pick my winner when the course is over and I give away this quasi prize pack. And if you need a little bit more help, there's a blog version of this trick tip available on radratvideo.com. If it helps you pace it out and take your time and read a paragraph at a time, that is available to you as well. Next week on the Shred School, we're going to learn the kickflip. It's been a long time coming, something that people are very excited to be able to learn, something that feels really cool when you do finally get it, and I'm excited to guide you through that process, and I will see you next week. Until then, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribed. You can sponsor me on Patreon, you can join the channel on YouTube, but mostly I just want to see you landing these tricks, and I want to see you next week ready to do that kickflip. Let's do it.